Okay, so back to my part two, or back with the part two. Now, this power nozzle, I think, deserves a little bit extra time to talk about. With the upgraded power nozzle, I'm very happy that it has been upgraded. It's got a swivel neck now. I'm pleased that it has a nice design to it. But here are some drawbacks for me. One thing is these spinners, you almost need to replace regularly because even just sitting down, they squish and they look so matted. So they become less effective over time. They also tend to make the power nozzle do this. If you just have it running stationary, it'll just kind of very faintly kind of wobble. So because they're spinning, they're counter-rotating with each other. The brush roll itself, it has nice stiff bristles. Yeah, I think you can hear that. Nice stiff bristles. So it does groom pretty well. And the belts, I only had to change the belt once on this, and that was just because I wanted to see, and I just wanted to try a different belt in it. And it does do a really good job. You can see it really doesn't hold a lot of junk. Every once in a while you may get a strand or from here and there. I'm just going to put that strand in the water. So it will do that sometimes, but the main concern that I have is look how much cleaning you're not getting because of these giant covers. I mean, this is almost as long as my thumb on the belt side. This is as long as my pinky on this side. So you're losing, I mean, almost this whole distance in cleaning across the whole, width of the power nozzle. There's no suction except for what's being directed out the sides to these. But this is not deep cleaning your carpet. These spin on the top surface of your carpet. So if you try and vacuum up against this couch, you're not cleaning at least this far away. So you have to go head on. And so that means corners aren't going to happen. You won't be able to clean corners with the power nozzle. And I understand that there are a lot of collectors out there, or people who want to be collectors, or even people who don't own this rainbow, and I'm not trying to deter them from buying the rainbow, because I do, again, think that it's a great machine, but I'm giving you my honest opinion, and this is from regular use and just knowing how it performs, that I don't think that this is a smart idea at all. It looks good on paper and it sounds cool because it has active edge groomers, but you're taking a loss with it. You're really reducing your cleaning width to just a little bit longer than my hand. So this may be like 8 inches wide, 9 inches wide right here. I don't think that you really need these belt guard, or the cord guards, or whatever they want to call it right here, because this is a small enough power nozzle as it is, and there are brands out there like Miele or Wesselwork that make theirs without those. And I'm not trying to bash this machine. I'm not trying to deter anybody. This is just my honest review. I can guarantee you that this is not cleaning over here as well as this is. And these brushes keep the brush roll from kind of coming in contact with the carpet as much as this could be. So I really like the older generation E-Series and E2 series power nozzles. I think that they cleaned better because they didn't have all this mumbo jumbo on it. I like them because they are effective at getting around things when it's a large particle that just gets flicked into the path. But otherwise, that's kind of where it ends. So a positive note is it's very easy to change the belt. There are these 2 tabs on either side, and then there's this turny switch right here to unlock it. And then there's a little button up here, I think, too, that you just press to get it to open. Otherwise, this is a very solid part of the vacuum. It's very well made. It doesn't like to steer very easily, but that's because of this reason here. There are no wheels on the front of this power nozzle. There are none. There's only the rear wheels right here, and then the front just sits on top of these spinner brushes. That's it. So these are constantly have just as much weight on the vacuum, or guide the vacuum just as much as these rear wheels do. So if this isn't spinning, it's just being pushed around on these front brushes. So that's the reason why it wobbles when you're on carpeting. And that's the reason why there really is no height adjustment on this. There's really no automatic adjustment either. It always rides at one height. It just sits on the top surface because there's no front wheels on the vacuum. So, and you can see I'm spinning this brush, and the side brushes don't spin as quickly as this brush does. So several revolutions of this brush will finally cause these to make a revolution. So that's just a little something that I have found with this. So you're not actually getting, there's no front wheels, there's no real height adjustment on this machine. It just sits on these brushes, which is the reason why they smush down. And they kind of make the vacuum fight you when you're trying to steer it, because the rotations will actually just kind of make it move whichever direction it wants to. Of course, you can still steer it, but it's not as precise as it could be. So that's my little spiel on that. The other part that I find to be a big weakness about this power nozzle is, or the setup of the unit, all these connections, you will hear air hissing out of them more than a regular vacuum. And when you're tugging this machine around on a deep pile carpet like this one, when you have the hose connected to it, this is what happens. It will actually, when you pull on the vacuum, because there's no clip down here really, it will actually break the seal a little bit right here at the bottom of the machine when you try and pull it across the carpet. Which is why I really don't vacuum with the dolly. I'm forced to kind of move the machine around myself, because that way I'm not causing the machine and the hose to kind of separate at the bottom, and you can hear the air hiss out of it when you pull on it. So to me, again, that's a downfall on the machine. And I am not the only one who has realized that. So it's not totally sealed, even though it is under pressure, I guess you could say, or under suction, or whatever you want to call it. Uh-oh. What is wrong with this? Is this broken? Oh, there we go. That little spring thingy popped out of it, so it wasn't sealing down like it's supposed to. So overall, I do kind of worry about the side clips too for that point right there. That one wasn't locking because the metal spring that's underneath it wasn't into the clip. Not a good thing. I worry because I don't really have a local place that will service this because they're a Rainbow distributor. I'd have to take it to a vacuum cleaner store and then deal with all that. But again, I know I'm going to get hate comments or dislikes and things, but again, I own the machine. Some collectors do own Rainbows, but they may not own this one, and I know a lot of the viewers that watch my channel, they don't post videos, and they just kind of follow, and I don't really feel that they can honestly make a fair assessment if they've never used one or never owned one, and it really takes the ownership to determine how suitable a vacuum cleaner is performance-wise for a house. It's like, just because you took it for a test drive doesn't mean that you own the car and you can honestly say that, you know, hey, I've had problems with mine. Well, if you don't have a mine, then you can't really make an assessment. So that's just my personal belief and my personal opinion. You can always share what you've heard, but you can't share personal experience if you've never had a personal experience. So that's a little spiel of mine. This is much cleaner. You can see the bottom of the carpet. So I'm going to turn this baby on. And you can hear it. It does have a vibration. And you can hear the air kind of leaking out of it. You can see it kind of bumping itself up off the floor. Well, sort of. And that isn't actually the vacuum bumping itself across the floor. I don't know if you could hear that, like that odd, like vibration, power down sort of thing. But that's how they all work. The grooming on this carpet isn't the greatest. But the reason why it bumps off the carpet is because those brushes are rotating and you're pulling it backwards against the way that they turn. They turn inward. So when you pull it backwards, you're kind of pulling it against the direction that they're spinning. In a way, I guess. I mean, it is and it isn't. They kind of, I don't know how to explain it. They both, you know, turn in. So it'll do that by pulling it backwards. The other thing that I wanted to say was, what was I going to say? I do like the vacuum, so the 1-year ownership, I would say I've definitely used this one of the least in terms of how often I use my machines. I haven't touched my Dyson in over a year, maybe even longer, my DC65. It's in the closet almost permanently. I'll take it out at some point, but I don't really have much of a desire to use it. It's not because I don't like Dysons, it's just because I don't feel that it deep cleans, which again is my opinion, and I own it. So, overall though, I do like the rainbow. And a little side story, my grandparents, and you probably heard me say this dozens of times before, my grandparents own a rainbow D2. That's the D2 that I used, and I owned a deed that somebody rigged to be able to accept a power nozzle, and it was a Eureka-style power nozzle. It was a sweep and groom, and it was a Canadian model, but it was almost like the genuine rainbow. It had the wood grain, and it was like a cream color. It just didn't say rainbow on it. It said sweep and groom. So, anyway, I gave my grandparents that Eris Guardian Platinum. Well, then they said their wind tunnel was starting to fail on them. So I sent them a Maytag M500. Well, then they said that that was too noisy and they didn't like it. So that was an inconvenience for me. And they apologized repeatedly, but they didn't like it. So a couple of weeks ago, my grandparents called my dad, and they were talking and everything, and they were talking about vacuums, and they had said, you know, and I heard my dad, he didn't know I was listening. He's like, yeah, I've talked to him, he just doesn't want to, you know, and I understand your situation, and I understand his situation, and I've tried talking to him, and he just doesn't want to, and yada, 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 and he's like, but I'll tell him to keep an eye out and everything. And it was my grandmother calling again, asking if they could have my rainbow, which to me is wrong. I love my grandparents, and they are not the type of, they're not grubby people, but they're older, and they're, you know, on a retired fixed income. And my grandmother didn't have retirement because she just had little jobs, and my grandfather did make good money. But back to the story, they are set on this idea that the only vacuum worth having is a rainbow because they had theirs for so many years. And I figure I should bring this over so you can see how dirty the water got in just that short period of time. You can't really see the carpet as easily. And they were calling to see if I would give them my rainbow because the way that they see it is, I have so many vacuums, why can't I spare one? Well, you're asking to borrow one of my most unique and most expensive vacuum cleaners, and my dad's been telling me, you know, they aren't going to be around much longer, you'll get it back. Baloney. you know, I don't care. Anything could happen in that period of time. It's going to be going to part-time collector's use to full-time use in someone's house. I don't think so. It's not happening. And he said, well, if you see your eyes, or keep your eyes peeled because you're so good at finding things like that. And they were going to pay me for this thing, but only like $200. And I paid way more than that for this because I was dishonest, and I don't usually say to my parents or family how much I pay for vacuums. But it's not theirs to have, and don't put me in the situation where I have to tell my grandparents or them that they can't have it for the 5th time. Because, and my grandmother of all people, I never would have expected her to do something like that. But I gave you guys that. I gave them a dustbuster. I gave them a brand new Shark garment steamer when they came down here, new in the box. And I gave them a little carpet sweeper because my grandmother has bad arthritis and she can't vacuum. It would be my grandfather's. And I gave them that Eris Platinum. And I showed them how much those cost new on eBay. And they still aren't happy. They pretend to be, but they're fixated on the rainbow, and they keep saying it's the quality. You know, you can't have something for that many years. I'm like, yours was made out of metal. It could have withstood a freaking blast without being in a fallout shelter. This thing is made out of plastic. I told them that it is way, there are way better machines out there for way less money. Especially that Maytag M500 I sent them. Excellent machine. Deep cleans much better than this rainbow does. And still not happy. They didn't like it. And they won't be happy until they get one. And I've considered going out and buying them one used and sending it to them, but I just think of the things that they've done so far and say, why would I even bother? It still wouldn't be good enough. So that's my little spiel. But I do really like this machine. Just take what I said the way that you want to. And please don't leave, you know, like, oh, I disagree, you know, this sort of thing, that sort of thing. If you have a rainbow, great, but again, I think that there's better machines out there. Thank you for watching.